Perfect. I think this should do it. I really hope that did it. Let's see. Hello, guys. Just getting a couple things ready. I do appreciate the new followers overnight, Alice. Mm, I think it's just getting going, maybe. Hello, guys. Just getting a couple things set up. I'm almost there. I just need to make sure that my Twitch and YouTube are actually twitching and tubing. Shouldn't be too long. Hmm. I don't know why I don't see it, but let's
Screen
get
curtain on.
open Twitch.
No,
Ah, there we go. Hello? Yep. All right. Perfect. All right, welcome. So I messed up some stuff with my restreaming software, so I think now I do have that fixed. So I think we should be good to go. So, like I was saying to nobody earlier because I wasn't streaming, I have a working title for my story. It's called A Lethal Journey. And the planet also has a name. It's called Sierra Alpha 1. And that's why Sierra Alpha 2 was on the edge of the same system. It kind of makes sense now. Um, the planet has a nickname as well. It's called the Junk Pile, or just Junk Pile by most people that live on it. And today, what we're gonna do is a little bit of lore, a little bit of history, and I made a quick video here that we're gonna watch in a second. And at the end of it, after that, sorry, we're gonna play a little chapter here that I've written. Subsequently, we will be recapping what happened, kind of some things for the next episode. So we're gonna start off with roughly about an 8 minute long video that I made. I do have chat running on my other phone there, so if you do have any questions or anything, please let me know. I do appreciate it. Welcome back, and let's get it, as my favorite YouTube streamer, the Rat Brat, would say.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a high-stakes, gritty sci-fi universe that draws heavy inspiration from the absolute titans of the genre. We are talking about Lethal Journey, A story that effortlessly blends the massive, sweeping societal scale you'd find in Isaac Asimov's Foundation or Frank Herbert's Dune with the incredibly intimate, high-pressure tactical stakes of Star Trek and Starship Troopers. For anyone new to this universe, if you love deep world building, narratives built around completely impossible odds, and a relentless countdown, you are going to absolutely devour this. We're going to break down exactly how a sprawling, oppressive planetary regime gets pushed to the absolute brink of violent revolution, all within a terrifying 5-day window.
So, what actually happens when a colossal alien arcology is given exactly 5 days before total annihilation? I really want you to keep that ticking clock in the back of your mind throughout our explainer today. This single, completely uncompromising deadline is the engine driving the entire story. It acts as a literal pressure cooker. It forces heroes, villains, bureaucrats, and scavengers to just throw their normal routines out the window and make desperate, irreversible choices. Every single character's motivation is suddenly shoved under a terrifying magnifying glass.
All right, Section 1, welcome to the junk pile. Okay, let's set the stage here. Welcome to the planet Sierra Alpha 1, although to the people actually living there, it's just called the junk pile. It's not a sprawling open landscape, it's a primary arcology, basically a towering closed-loop superstructure where your entire existence is dictated by altitude. Much like the stark class divides we see in classic sci-fi megacities, think Coruscant in Star Wars or the multi-layered hubs in Stargate, status here is strictly vertical. Up at the very top, you've got these pristine, sunlit summits with totally opulent administrative sanctums. Clean air, absolute luxury, the whole shebang. But travel down a bit, and the reality shifts drastically. The bottom levels are defined by dead cold, toxic smog, rust, and automated defense drones that are completely lethal. An entire generation of human laborers lives and dies down there in hazardous plasma forges, doing nothing but processing raw materials to fuel the wealth of the ruling class far above them. It is a massive powder keg, just waiting for a spark.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 1% sabotage.
So, we have this incredibly volatile world, right? But the inciting incident that sets this whole epic conflict into motion isn't some massive planetary invasion, it's actually incredibly subtle. Across the entire arcology, manufacturing efficiency drops, but by exactly 1%. Just one. To the rulers, this just looks like pure, frustrating administrative incompetence. But the brilliant part is that this is actually a deliberate, highly calculated sabotage campaign by an underground rebellion. It's a strategic move engineered to induce absolute panic and paranoia among the ruling class, but without tripping any of the alarms that would trigger a full-scale military lockdown. It forces the rulers to look inward and just start pointing fingers at each other. How are they pulling this off? Well, it's basically death by 1,000 cuts. The rebels are using these tiny, almost invisible tactics. We're talking microscopic fractures in scrubber valves, or quietly routing raw alloys straight into the incinerators. One of the key architects of this plan is a guy named John. He looks like a standard heavy laborer, but he is secretly a level 10 technological penetrator. Navigating these lethal service conduits, John manages to bypass primary security and implant a dormant sleeper device right into the arcology's main data bus. And he takes his orders from a clandestine council of 6 rebel leaders, who use these shifting holographic scramblers. It is a classic sci-fi espionage trope brought right down to the ground level, making the underdog the engine of the story and completely blinding the ruling class to the true threat gathering literally under their feet.
Which brings us to Section 3, a 5-day death sentence.
Just as this subtle sabotage really starts taking hold, the narrative takes a massive, violent turn. The slow burn becomes a raging inferno, thanks to the explosive arrival of Sector General Franklin's military fleet. Franklin's border patrol was absolutely ambushed by rebel ships. He lost 10 of his 15 vessels, and the surviving 5 are limping toward the junk pile, critically crippled. So Franklin contacts the arcology's ruler, this deeply paranoid 400-pound alien named Governor Frederick, with an impossible demand. Frederick has exactly 5 days to prepare the dry docks and produce highly specific missing quantum drive components. We're talking rare magnetic core regulators that the arcology simply does not have. If Frederick cannot fix those hyperdrives in exactly 5 days, Franklin is going to execute him. Just like that, the trap is sprung.
Now, a really key element of the author's narrative approach for anyone stepping into this universe is making sure every single character has deeply relatable, very human motivations, even in this bizarre alien setting. That 5-day deadline acts as the ultimate pressure cooker, exposing these primal drives and perfectly grounding these grand spacefaring concepts. You've got 22-year-old Danielle, a bureaucrat who climbed the ladder a bit too fast, desperately hunting for the saboteur because she'll be executed if she fails. Governor Frederick is volatile and just scrambling to survive General Franklin's wrath. Franklin himself is uncompromising in his demand for repairs. And then you have the rebels, John, fighting to overthrow this oppressive regime simply to save his family, and his young son Adam, who just wants to ease his parents' suffering. This one deadline binds them all to a single inevitable collision.
Let's dig into Section 4, the Trojan Horse Protocol. You remember that dormant sleeper device John planted in the databus? Well, it needs off-world decryptor codes to actually activate, and the rebellion's absolute masterstroke is using General Franklin's arriving crippled military fleet as a literal Trojan horse. Attached to the blind spots on the lower hull of the flagship are these things called stuff pods. They are immense, freezing, lead-lined waste containers. And because they are so heavily shielded, they are completely invisible to standard biological scanners. Hiding inside those freezing, pitch-black containers is a specialized team of elite off-world rebels carrying the exact decryptor codes John needs.
When the fleet finally docks on day 5, automated cranes are going to detach these waste pods and drop them straight down the central freight shafts to be incinerated in Sector 7. This means John's mission is utterly terrifying. He has to quietly assemble a ground team of heavy lifters and dock rats, wait at the very bottom of the lethal freight chute, and manually cut these off-worlders out of the pods. And the catch? It's brutal. They have an incredibly tight 4-minute survival window before the automated hydraulic crushers engage and obliterate everything in the room. It is a do-or-die extraction mission of the absolute highest order.
So think about this for a second. We have the ruling class totally panicking over missing starship parts, the military prepping for an all-out war, and the rebels orchestrating a highly lethal extraction. But while all the adults are locked in this deadly game of chess, who is quietly preparing for the actual future of the planet?
We find out in Section 5, the scavenger prodigy awakens.
And this brings us to the ultimate underdog of the whole story, Adam, John's preteen son. Drawing heavily on that classic sci-fi trope of the young, isolated prodigy discovering their immense potential, something you see constantly in Star Wars or Dune, Adam operates in complete isolation. He's holed up inside an abandoned residential unit that was permanently sealed off a decade ago. He has successfully salvaged micropower regulators and clean data bridges to essentially rebuild a cracked datapad. And now, he's actually interfacing with a localized AI advisory system and running hyper-realistic flight simulators. By manually repairing the wireframe schematics of wrecked ships in his little digital sandbox, he's learning the intimate nuts-and-bolts anatomy of advanced starships. Every blown fuse he replaces in the simulation is directly building his real-world engineering intelligence. Adam is unknowingly arming himself with the exact skills required to pilot the vessels that will become the centerpiece of the coming revolution.
All right, final stretch. Section 6, the inevitable convergence.
Because look, none of these storylines exist in a vacuum, right? They violently crash together as the week ends. Just trace the timeline. During days 1 through 4, Governor Frederick's absolute panic pushes the industrial lower levels to 150% capacity. Ironically, this only creates more chaos and actively aids the rebels' plans, all while Danielle is desperately hunting for John's saboteurs. Then, day 5 arrives. The crippled military fleet finally docks. The Trojan horse is inside the gates. At minute 0, those automated cranes drop the stuff pods, and John begins his lethal 4-minute extraction at the very bottom of the arcology. All of this is happening right as young Adam's technological awakening reaches its absolute peak. It is this perfectly structured, frantic collision course.
And that brings us to the ultimate reality of this narrative. When that 5-day deadline officially expires, the junk pile is going to ignite. We have desperate bureaucrats, a brutal military, masterful rebel tacticians, and a self-taught scavenger prodigy all locked in a room right as the match is struck. The author built this entire world to honor the legacy of classic sci-fi, but ultimately asks us a deeper question. In a galaxy defined by cold mechanics and rigid hierarchies, can the sheer force of human will and family devotion actually break the machine? I highly encourage you to dive into the source material of Lethal Journey to find out whose survival strategy holds up when the ashes finally settle. Seriously, what do you think would happen if you were given just 5 days to overthrow a planet?
All right, so that was that. And now we're gonna get started, of course, with the actual story part of this. I am just gonna go here for a second. Hello, this is me. I'm Muda. I am a blind husband married to my wife, Jenny. This stream is sponsored by Atlantic Coastal Cleaning in Niagara. If you want a detailed clean of your house and a full restoration, you need to contact Atlantic Coastal Cleaning at atlanticcoastalcleaning.ca. If it's not good enough for Jenny, it's not good enough. Alright, so now we're gonna get started with that out of the way. I hope you guys enjoy. Have a great day, and I hope you enjoy this part of the stream. I will be on chat if you guys have any questions.
More button. August 18th, 2000. Note. Free deep beneath the deafening rhythmic thunder of the heavy plasma forges in Sector 4, far below the prying optics of the Arcology's automated security grid, a massive, rusted coolant reservoir chamber sat empty. The air here was suffocating, thick with the acrid stench of sulfur and the metallic tang of dried machine blood. Shadows clung to the curved, condensation-slicked walls, shivering with every heavy hydraulic strike that echoed from the active foundries above. John stood perfectly still in the center of the gloom. Even in the dim, flickering light of a dying emergency lumen, his towering, 6-foot-plus frame was imposing. His massive shoulders were tense, the thick muscles of his arms corded tight beneath his soot-stained work jacket. He rubbed his heavily scarred knuckles, tracing the jagged ridges of all plasma burns while he waited. He was exhausted, his bones aching from a brutal 15-hour shift on the welding lines, but adrenaline pushed the fatigue aside. From the absolute darkness of the eastern access tunnel, a faint, high-frequency hum began to vibrate through the damp air. John dropped his hands to his sides, his posture stiffening as 6 figures emerged from the blackness. They moved without a single footstep echoing on the grated floor, gliding into the dim light of the reservoir like ghosts drawn from the static of a dead hollow screen. None of them had a discernible face. None of them even had a defined physical form. They were utilizing black market digital scramblers, highly illegal, military-grade camouflage rigs strapped to their chests that projected a localized, spherical distortion field around their bodies. Looking at them was like staring through a cracked prism into a storm of dead pixels. Their outlines constantly shifted and blurred, their height seemingly fluctuating as the holographic camouflage fragmented the light around them. Where a head should be, there was only a swirling vortex of gray and black static. Where arms and legs moved, the space simply warped, bending the background pipes and rusted walls into sickening, funhouse mirror reflections. It was a perfect, absolute anonymity. Even if the governor's enforcers were recording the meeting, all they would capture was a visual void. One of the static-shrouded figures stepped forward. When it spoke, the voice was run through a heavy synthetic modulator, stripping away all traces of gender, age, or accent. It sounded like grinding metal and synthesized wind. The perimeter relay is in place, the voice stated flatly. The sleeper code is dormant within the primary junction. You executed the installation flawlessly, John. John offered a single, tight nod. He didn't speak. In this circle, words were a liability. The figure shifted, the static field around it rippling violently for a second before stabilizing. What Danielle and the governor's lapdogs believe is a minor, unexplainable 1% drop in planetary manufacturing efficiency is not a statistical anomaly. It is us. A second figure stepped up beside the first, its modulated voice echoing the exact same flat, metallic tone. The 1% margin was carefully calculated. It is the exact threshold of failure that triggers administrative panic without triggering a full-scale military lockdown of the lower levels. For the past 3 months, we have been systematically bleeding the Arcology's supply lines. Misaligned sorting algorithms on the textile belts, microscopic fractures induced in the atmospheric scrubber valves, routed shipments of raw hyperloy diverted into the incinerator chutes. It is 1,000 tiny, invisible cuts. We are starving the beast just enough to make it thrash, the first figure resumed. And right now, Governor Frederick is thrashing exactly the way we anticipated. He is looking inward, hunting shadows and blaming his own counsel. His paranoia is blinding him to the true threat, which means the board is finally set for the next phase. John crossed his massive arms over his chest, his brow furrowing deep beneath his grand-streaked forehead. Phase 2, he rumbled, his deep, gravelly voice cutting through the hum of the scramblers. Tell me what is coming. The 6 figures seemed to tighten their loose circle around him, the distortion fields overlapping and bleeding into one another like a wall of gray static. In 5 days, General Franklin is bringing 5 heavily damaged warships into the primary upper atmosphere dry docks, the leader said. The general is demanding a massive influx of specialized quantum drive components and heavy hull plating. The upper administrative tiers are currently in a state of absolute blind panic trying to source materials they simply do not have. Every security eye, every enforcement drone, and every administrative lackey will be staring at the sky, focused entirely on the docking ring and the military vanguard. which leaves the ground floor wide open, John murmured, the tactical reality snapping into focus. Exactly, the second figure replied. But we are not just using the distraction. We are using the convoy itself. Franklin's ships are limping. They are dragging a massive debris field and emergency auxiliary modules with them. Hitched to the blind spots of the flagship's lower hull are three heavy-duty stuff pods. John's eyes narrowed. Stuff pods. It was a lower-tier dockworker slang for the massive and manifested, lined cargo containers typically used to haul toxic industrial slag or deep space waste out of the system. They were heavily shielded to prevent radiation leaks, which meant they were entirely impenetrable to standard biological and life science scanners. They aren't filled with slag, the leader confirmed, anticipating John's thought. They are filled with our people. A specialized team of off-world rebels, heavily armed and carrying the decryptor keys needed to interface with the sleeper device you planted yesterday. They have been riding in the freezing dark of those stuff pods for weeks, bypassing the system's outer perimeter blockades by hiding in the shadow of the military's uncrippled flagship. John felt a cold chill run down his spine, completely independent of the damp chill in the reservoir. The scale of the operation was staggering. They weren't just causing a minor disruption anymore. They were actively importing an invasion force under the governor's nose. When the fleet docks, the figure continued, the automated loading cranes will detach the stuff pods and drop them down the central freight shafts into the lower tire processing bays to be incinerated or crushed. That is where you come in. The leader raised a static blurred arm, pointing directly at John's chest. You are going to lead a ground team, the synthesized voice commanded. We have selected a squad of 12 local rebel sympathizers, heavy lifters, plasma cutters, and dock rats who know the freight shafts better than the automated systems do. You will position your team at the bottom of the central freight chute in Sector 7. When those stuff pods drop, you will have exactly 4 minutes to intercept them, cut through the lead-lined bulkheads, and extract the off-worlders before the automated crushers engage and flatten the pods into scrap metal. John's jaw tightened. Sector 7 freight chute. It was a massive, lethal environment filled with crushing hydraulic plates and incinerator vents. If his timing was off by even a few seconds, the off-worlders would be crushed into a cube of bloody steel and his entire ground team would be trapped in the processing grid. Once you pull them out of the pods, the second figure added, you will guide them through the maintenance arteries directly to the security perimeter junction where you planted the module. The off-worlders will activate the sleeper code, unlock the target vault, and initiate the primary assault. You are the bridge, John. Without you, the off-worlders die in the crushers and the vault remains sealed. John stared into the swirling vortex of static that served as the leader's face. He thought of his wife, her hands swollen and her eyes bloodshot from endless hours on the textile lines. He thought of Adam, brilliant and entirely alone, piecing his education together from scraps in the dark, forced to navigate a toxic, rusted cage just to survive. The weight of his family's suffering pressed against his ribs like a physical weight, hardening his resolve into unbreakable iron. I need the exact drop schedule for the pods, John said, his voice dropping into a low, deadly register. And I need the manifest of the ground team you've assigned to me. I won't take anyone who hesitates. You will have the data packet transferred to your secure terminal by morning, the leader said. Gather your people quietly. Ensure their tools are charged and their plasma cutters are hot. In 5 days, when the sky fills with broken warships and the governor is looking up, we tear the foundation out from under him. The 6 figures did not offer handshakes or parting pleasantries. Their mission delivered, they turned in perfect synchronization and began to glide back toward the pitch-black tunnel from which they had emerged. The localized distortion fields warped the shadows around them, their forms stretching and fragmenting until the high-frequency hum faded into the oppressive roar of the distant plasma forges. John stood alone once more in the center of the rusted coolant reservoir. The air felt heavier now, charged with the electric anticipation of the coming storm. He reached into his pocket, his calloused fingers brushing against a small, carved wooden token he had made for Adam years ago. He gripped it tightly. 5 days. 5 days until the stuff pods dropped. 5 days until the off-worlders hit the ground. 5 days until the invisible cuts they had inflicted on the planetary machine finally bled it dry. John turned away from the shadows, stepping back toward the loud, blinding reality of the industrial levels. He had a shift to finish, a team to assemble, and a revolution to ignite. Text field. Vertical scroll bar. 21 pages. 0%. Adjustable. Checklist. Off. Page 1 of 3. Button. Attachments. Page 1 of 3.
All
Button.
right, guys.
Handwriting.
So
Page 1 of 3.
I am
Button.
back,
New note.
and
Button.
so that was pretty good. I'm pretty proud of that's part of the story so far. It was a very short part. I think again, it's gonna be a pretty long episode already with the lore part that we already did. So I'm gonna continue forward. I think in the next part, like every character progression ever, somebody's gonna have to die. And I don't really know who that is. I have an idea in my head a little bit, but I don't want to make it too sad. But I mean, the kid's got to grow up quickly, right? So somebody's definitely dying. And I also suspect Danielle isn't so goody-goody as we think she is so far in the story. And we will have to find that out shortly. And I don't think that Frederick is as bad as we think he is. And I don't think we know enough about Franklin so far to really make a decision. All we know is he's a military guy. His fleet got smoked by the rebels. And now he's pissed off at Franklin because he's gonna have a bunch of missing parts. Obviously, John's gonna have his adventure. He's gonna have to go to the incinerator chutes. And the reason they do it that way, because if they were to throw that waste into the suns or onto a planet, it would create a major radiation event. So they have really high-powered quantum evaporators slash incinerator plasma cores that make sure that whatever they dump down there, instead of turning into extra radiation that may mess up like their solar system, that it actually makes them almost an unlimited amount of energy. So in this universe, energy really isn't a problem. They could literally do anything, but it's like, how do you get the materials? Where, how do you put them together? Where's the labor force? And I think it ends up that artificial intelligence costs a lot of money, so it's just cheaper to have humans. And I think that's exactly what we're going to find out in real life actually one day, is that AI costs so much money. Some of these AI centers data centers can only last a few years before they're obsolete. And we're going to eventually find out that it's just easier to get the good old monkey fingers to, boop, 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 type it in. So next, we have another video from Scotia by the Sea. I'm pretty proud of myself. I was able to use a video editing software in Windows and actually I don't know what the term is exactly, but it's at 1080 now, or yeah, 1080 now, I think, that I've got, maybe 720p. Either ways, you guys all watch on mobile, so who really cares, right? If you really want 4K videos, I can put them up, but they're going to be on YouTube, because as soon as my computer tries to live encode any 4K video, it is just a hot mess. Like, I mean, everything's jittering out. I have a 6th generation i7 with 32 gigs of RAM. It's good enough for everything I normally do, but this is a new hobby, and I might have to whip out one of my other laptops. But for now, we're going to make this work as long as it will. And here is our brief little video, and I do hope you guys enjoy. You might hear a little bit of beginning of the other video. I unfortunately can't really help that, but here we go. And I will see you guys the next time.
Welcome to the Explainer. Today,
It's all cool stuff.
welcome to the Explainer.
It's all cool stuff.
Oh, cool. Boats above ground. Oh, maybe they do work here. Or they park it up
Or
here.
they just rent this land out to boat owners.
Well, like you can have your boat parked here so it's not continuously in the ocean so it stays fresher.
Yeah, like a boat rental parking lot.
Possibly.
So they probably rent
They
out
just
these.
pull
Is
it
that the
out.
thing that's spinning on top of the
Yeah.
ship?
Well, it's also the lines.
Ah,
The
yes.
sails.
Yeah.
Those are always
So these guys are just all in the middle of the parking lot, or?
like both sides. Trailers, like big ass trailers.
Oh, they just drag the trailers down to the water when they're ready.
So then they can have more space, right?
All the food probably came by desk sitting there looking at it, and we're not there.
It's really big.
It's nice. Wow.